The content you're about to hear may be graphic in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh, how I wonder what it's like to relax. See the sky down under. Hope my plans collapse. Oh, how I'm under the surface of my tears, falling down asunder the meaning of my years.
This is True Crime XS.
One of these stories is like an update to something else we did, and one of these stories is because we just did Overboard, and I was like, we got to do that. And I'm always interested when they find like fugitives and like what the definition of a fugitive is. So I pulled the story of Michael Wiseman. Had you ever heard of him before?
I don't think so.
I've seen him like on like the lists, but like I never looked into his case so much. This is I did pull like a People article from November just to talk about him. I thought it was interesting how they headlined it for People. It basically just said, man charged with sexual exploitation of a minor finally arrested after nearly 14 years on the run. That's a long time, but I think the most disappointing part for me was when I like started doing the math on 14 years and I only got to 2011. I was like, that feels like not very long ago, but it's been 14 years.
It's 14 years all day long, buddy.
This is a story from Ingrid Vasquez. It was first published in People November 12th, 2025. This guy has like the saddest looking mugshot ever. Like he looks like he's basically stopped crying long enough for them to press the button on the camera. But it says an Arizona man charged with multiple counts of sexual exploitation of a minor has finally been arrested after nearly 14 years on the run. Michael Wiseman, identified by the Scottsdale Police Department as its number 2 most wanted fugitive. And now I have to know who number 1 is, because that's the rabbit hole we'll go down next. He was arrested in France on November the 1st. This is according to the Scottsdale Police Department in a news release. His arrest stems from a 2008 case in which he was charged with multiple counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. Following his arrest in February 2008, authorities alleged that Wiseman cut off his ankle bracelet and fled the United States in November of that year while under court-ordered monitoring. Scottsdale police said that the FBI's Phoenix field office was able to obtain an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, or a UFAP warrant. This led to his arrest in Spain in 2009 after being extradited to the U.S. and being sentenced in 2012. However, police say he fled the country yet again while out on probation. So this guy has left the United States to avoid his punishment twice. Soon after, multiple nationwide extradition warrants were issued for Wiseman's arrest on charges of probation violation related to sexual exploitation of a minor, probation violation related to escape in the first degree, and failure to register as a sex offender. Scottsdale Police Criminal Intelligence Unit, or their CIU, the detectives there said that Wiseman first fled to Vietnam, then traveled to Poland, and later to France, where he was allegedly living under the alias Robert Danilewski. This is all in that press release and the People article. In September, Scottsdale CIU, in coordination with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, submitted a provisional arrest warrant to the Department of Justice International Affairs Office. After its approval, the warrant was forwarded to French authorities, who police said confirmed that Michael Wiseman was residing in Kilstet, France. Upon obtaining a search warrant for his email address, they gained access to Michael Wiseman's personal account in October 2025, which included historical and current data and what was believed to be new child sexual abuse material. The videos were confirmed to be child sexual abuse materials involving Weissman after being turned over to a detective in the Scottsdale PD Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit that they have nicknamed Heat and assigned to the Arizona Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. So, according to all of this, the newly acquired abuse materials contained evidence that allegedly indicated Michael Weissman was sexually abusing his adopted child. This led to French authorities charging Weissman with rape and sexual assault of a minor under 15 years of age. French authorities are holding him for crimes committed there before they're going to extradite him to the United States. This is an interesting case. Like, this guy left the country to continue doing what he was on probation for, which is horrible.
It seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Like, this guy definitely did not want to be found, caught.
Well, and obviously, I don't know exactly what it means for exploitation charges, but all of that stuff is like really terrible and gross, and it's a weird thing to like fight for your right to do, I guess.
Yeah.
In the fact that he's like running, but they did finally get him caught, and he had to have known at some point like he was going to have to face this, right?
Yeah.
And the eluding, I assume, does that matter? Like, do you get extra charges for that?
For which part?
Like the fact that the arrest warrant was out and he left, like he was a fugitive.
Yeah, he'll probably get an absconding charge based on what I see here.
Okay.
I don't know. It's one of those things when I look at it, and it's interesting to see how scattered this has become. I mean, you want to talk about a jurisdictional nightmare. We talk about those all the time. You can't get much worse than a guy who has already had an escape to a foreign country that he's on probation for, in addition to exploitation of a minor, in addition to probation violations, like being found in a foreign country where not only does he have all of these warrants for essentially absconding, escaping, but he also, like, in addition to the flight to avoid prosecution, now has new charges for the very thing that he was on, like, the original charges for. None of that's good.
Right. That came to light because they were taking him into custody for, right?
Right. And so I look at this and, you know, there are genuinely moments where I look at cases of child sexual abuse materials and read about them in the news versus what I know to be in the court documents. And I go, I don't think that's exactly what people are going to think that is. But this guy appears to be exactly the nightmare. Like, he has this adopted child that he's abusing. So it's very difficult to defend someone who, like you said, put all this work in just to basically continue abusing children.
Yeah, he looks like a nightmare. All right.
Well, like, looking at him, there's not much to this. This is just true crime news for true crime news sake. And, you know, it came up, you and I think had passed some of these back and forth, and this is one of them. He's not the only one. I didn't know if you had a lot of thoughts on him.
Now, I had a tendency not to really think about guys like this. I do think that, you know, it is a great thing that he got caught, because a lot of these cases, they fall under the radar and, you know, they get away with being a fugitive, right?
Yeah.
And that's not good. But yeah, I think it's awesome that I guess he'll be behind bars. I'm not actually sure. I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to happen from here.
Well, I know nothing about French law, but I can't imagine it's good.
I would imagine it's Yeah, it's not good. He was obviously. I guess my biggest problem is that so he was already sentenced, and he was going to have a lifetime of probation, right?
Correct.
Which I guess is why he wanted to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why he didn't want to be on probation. He didn't want to be registered on the sex offenders registry. If I understand Arizona law correctly, and I'm not great with like Arizona, New Mexico, that area, because sometimes I've been confused about how things work. I think there's a big suspended sentence that's like sitting here over his head.
Well, I was trying to read. So, okay. He was brought back.
The first time or the second time?
Well, after the first time he left again. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. The charges are still pending. You already talked about this. It was a fugitive arrest in 2009.
Right. He's brought back from Spain.
Right. And so he said that he left the country the first time after growing tired of the hardship from his wife leaving him after his 2008 arrest and his financial difficulties, according to court records. Wiseman, who spent over 2 years in jail after his return from Spain, was sentenced in 2012 to lifetime probation and 1 year deferred jail sentence. The additional incarceration was later deleted by a judge in at least one of his 2 Arizona cases.
Interesting.
I don't know that judges can delete things.
I don't know.
So the source for this is ABC News. I just want to point that out, but that's weird. I don't know what that means exactly, but
that feels like somebody AI'd their way out of like figuring something out.
And this is from November 14th, 2025. So it is recent. I don't know. I do know that maybe it was recalled. Like,
I don't think a judge is going to be deleting it. I think a judge could have modified the judgment, like but that would require like a motion for appropriate relief or something.
Right. Okay. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. So, whenever his French case occurs, he'll have to come back to the United States, right? They're going to extradite him back because he was. The whole reason that occurred was because they had a special warrant for basically a fugitive that absconded, right?
Correct. Yeah, and he doesn't have like an inmate corrections profile I could look up. There are court records in here that you can poke around. I mentioned I made the comment that he was the number 2 most wanted Scottsdale, Arizona police person. Do you know who number 1 is? I'm going to throw it out there.
No, I don't.
It's Robert William Fisher. So the guy that's wanted in the murder of his wife, son, and daughter. He like blew up the house and then drove out into the wilderness. That guy. He's also on the FBI's most wanted list.
Oh, yeah. I remember. That's an older case, though, right?
Yeah. It's April 2001.
Yeah, okay.
So he's the number 1. This guy was number 2 behind him.
But all that they were doing, I just want to make sure I understand this. Wiseman just didn't want to be on probation.
Right. So he left the U.S. and made a circuitous route around the world and ended up in France living a new life.
But if he had just stayed here on probation, like none of that, they wouldn't have issued a warrant for him. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Wow.
Yeah, like he going there rather than waiting out his probation or whatever he had to do.
Well, his probation was lifetime.
Right, but I'm saying some of that stuff is sometimes found to be unconstitutional. Anyways, point being that might have changed, but now he's going to have to face the new charges in France. He's going to have to come back here and face charges. He
won't get away with probation this time.
I don't think he'll get out of France.
He may not. That was another thing. I don't know. I was trying to think really quick. I don't know if France is more lenient or less lenient,
Right.
but I know that when he gets back to the United States, he is going to have to serve at least that 1 year sentence.
Yeah.
Unless that's the one the judge deleted, supposedly. I don't know what's happening with that. That was weird.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, that guy's probably not going to see a whole lot of sunshine in his future.
Yeah.
You know what
That
I
was
mean?
his choice, though. I mean,
He is interesting, but he's not the most interesting thing that I had for True Crime News. So we use the Charlie Project as a bouncing off point for a lot of our cases. I used to use it a lot more than I do now. Do you remember the days of using the Charlie Project for pretty much everything?
I do. And Charlie Project and NamUs are
Right.
obviously my go-to sources for missing people. And usually Charlie Project has more information that could be possibly like a little less formal than what's on NamUs, right?
Right. And for those of you who are in a giving mood, Charlie Project is definitely someone to give to. It's run by a woman named Megan. She's been running Charlie Project for a pretty long time. A lot of work goes into that site and keeping that database up. Over the years, you and I have found it's not always comprehensive because of how much work has to go into something like that. And this summer, I read some of her blog here and there. And she had this blog that popped with one of the tags I follow on the Charlie Project, like the RSS feed tags. It was interesting that she brought up something and she kind of answered something I'd always wondered about way back a long time ago. You and I got into a conversation in our coverage of Israel Keys where we were talking about a guy named Anthony Michael Lennon. Do you remember him?
Of course.
Okay, so she put up a post in July of 2025 on her blog about Anthony Michael Lennon, which because at one point he was not there anymore. But I wanted to read this blog post because it's interesting and there's a piece of news. But it's interesting how she wrote it. This is from Megan from the Charlie Project. And she says, just did almost an entire case write-up, then had to throw it away. Annoying. And it's a 3-paragraph thing. She says, so this gentleman, Anthony Lennon, is listed as a missing person on NamUs and elsewhere. He was added to the top 10 most wanted fugitives list in the state of Oklahoma 13 years after his disappearance in 2025. He's got warrants out for possession of child pornography. She says, she's got a bunch of links in here. So essentially, the first place she takes you is over to NamUs, which we had covered. He's missing person 32434. He's still in NamUs at the moment. And then she says, this article makes it sound like Anthony Lennon is a pedophile wanted for child porn and that he was kidnapped from the motel he was clerking at by whoever stole all the money from the cash register. So I decided to write up a Charlie Project case file for him. It's wrong to rob motels and kidnap and presumably murder motel desk clerks, even if that particular person is a pedophile. So the articles he references there is, this KFOR.com, which is Oklahoma News 4. It's an article pulling from a bunch of other articles that you and I have used over the years. One of the things that you and I also do a lot of is newspapers.com. We have a subscription and we use that for a lot of the work we do here. Those subscriptions are incredibly expensive to get like the, top tier access to everything that's ever been written about an old case. But a lot of times between the Charlie Project and NamUs and these old articles, you and I use that to find court records and to talk about the things we talk about. We're not just, even if it sounds like we're just pulling from a couple of articles, it's likely we've watched a number of things about a case and also read quite a bit about it if those things aren't available.
I actually get as much information as I can find before we talk about anything.
Right. And that's just been the way you and I have been, like, as far back as I can remember. That's how we've done things to figure out if we really need to go through the effort to do a public records request, which is one type of way to get information, or a FOIA, which is a different type of information request. It's a Freedom of Information Act request. I do a lot of this for my day job. We do a lot of this for the show where we're just digging into things. So Megan goes on to say, I was just about ready to hit save and post, which I found this article. And the article she references here is out of Coco News 5, which is the ABC News affiliate in Oklahoma. Specifically, this is by Jason Berger. It's out of Moore, Oklahoma. And they talked to the detective there. And it's like one of those kind of news at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening kind of interviews where it's like a few tidbits about the case. And it says the article quotes a former detective from the police department investigating Anthony Lennon's case. The detective said they determined the crime scene at the motel was staged, that Lennon had an active warrant for his arrest when he went missing. Now they think there was no kidnapping and the person who stole, or the robber, was him. So he's not really missing after all, just one of the quite a few fugitives from justice who have found their way onto NamUs and other missing persons database. I hit delete instead of save. So this is Megan talking about it in the blog. We talked about him at length. We were trying to figure out
That timing, man.
Yeah. He goes missing March 9th, 2012. And for those of you who don't remember, he goes missing in Moore, Oklahoma. Israel Keys had been wandering around Texas in these days. We had some better potential candidates for what had gone on there. We had ruled out James Tidwell, or I had. I think you were still wondering about James Tidwell. I know a lot of people think he killed Jimmy Tidwell. I do not think that he killed Jimmy Tidwell, so I was looking for alternatives. This is one of the alternatives that came up. His name was Anthony Michael Lennon. So Megan explains why he doesn't end up on the Charlie Project blog. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I had read that this summer, and I was surprised to see his name anywhere. Not that surprised, but surprised. And it was really cool to hear her explain, her frustration with his case and having to dig into other sources, which is something you and I do. And then Saturday, November 1st, 2025, I woke up to a centralnewyork.com article, CNY Central. It's a news station up in New York. Robert Hagan wrote this, and he updated it a couple of times on Sunday, November the 2nd. And the headline says, Fugitive's elaborate escape ends. And that always catches my attention. But the sub-headline says, Anthony Lennon caught in New York after 13 years. It says, after more than a decade on the run, authorities said that Anthony Lennon, one of Oklahoma's 10 most wanted fugitives, was captured in New York. The Moore Police Department said Lennon was arrested on multiple counts of possession of child pornography, a case that has haunted authorities in Moore, Oklahoma for 13 years. They share kind of the X feed for this, which has the press release from him being declared most wanted, and then also the announcement of his arrest. And it says, after 13 years on the run, Oklahoma's 10 most wanted fugitive, Anthony Lennon, has been captured. Lennon faked his own kidnapping in Moore in 2012 to avoid arrest. This case remains active, but Lennon will finally be held accountable for his crimes. Press release attached. So Lennon initially evades arrest in March 2012 after he was charged with possession of child pornography. Moore Police Chief Todd Gibson described the materials found as quite disturbing, depicting the violent rape and sexual assault of children, including infants. He had been a convicted felon since 2008 on aggravated child pornography charges, but he had been released on probation after entering what's known as a blind plea deal. This is according to this article, and that came from Cleveland County District Attorney Jennifer Austin. 3 years after this conviction in 2008, prosecutors sought to revoke his probation when Anthony Lennon was found with child sexual abuse materials again. So he gets arrested, he bonds out, and then he disappears. Authorities say that Lennon staged a violent robbery, abduction, and murder at the Super 8 Motel in Moore, where he had been working to mislead investigators. So they noted that Anthony Lennon took elaborate steps, such as using his own blood to fake his death. So his evasion lasted more than a decade until authorities received new information, and he was captured outside a grocery store in Canton, New York, just 20 miles from the Canadian border. They also reveal some interesting stuff about him. So Anthony Lennon holds a master's degree in computer science. He had been living under the alias Justin Phillips, and he had been pursuing a PhD. His true identity was confirmed through fingerprints. Chief Gibson emphasized, "We will not stop, we will not lose focus, and no matter how long it takes or how far you run, we will come for you." Anthony Lennon is charged with 8 counts of child pornography and violating his probation. If convicted, he now faces life in prison. According to District Attorney Austin, they stated, "Now that he's been found, we will bring him to justice." And a U.S. Marshal Johnny Coleman from the Western District of Oklahoma remarked, "To me, the most important part is that this represents a great deal to the nameless children that were victims impacted by this crime." Authorities have obtained a warrant for Lennon's arrest for failure to register as a sex offender, and New York law enforcement is seeking additional charges. I just think all of this is fascinating. One, they caught him. Go ahead.
No, they did. Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this, I chose to highlight him a long time ago based on the idea that I personally found it absurd. The lengths someone would have to go to fake their own kidnapping and death and this robbery. I didn't know the extent of his problems with child abuse materials.
We didn't know any of that.
We knew that there was an accusation and that there were warrants, and we considered it. And
not from the very, but I just want to point out, how I remember it. I didn't go back and listen to the episodes or anything, but I remember sort of as we were formulating, it came up that he could possibly be running from a warrant.
Correct.
Or something like that. But he was one of the only people that was on that route in that area that could have possibly been a victim of Israel Keys during the trip to Texas, right?
The second trip, I think. I think this is right before Keys gets arrested. It's like 3 hours north of Dallas. We looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and we were just thinking in terms of the clerk idea at the coffee shop with Samantha Koenig's case, and
Sure.
Would he go into a motel and grab someone? Because he was known to use kind of crappy little motels. So we had put all that together, and we were like, he has time from the time he's seen to the time he's not seen, technically, to make this trip and grab this guy. We thought it was a little too messy for him, but it was.
You're right. It is the second trip.
Yeah, it's just one of a handful of missing persons that were a possibility as far as reported missing persons cases. And when we looked at it, I don't think either one of us went, yeah, he definitely did that. But we went, we can't rule this weirdness out. When we can't rule something that's strange out, we feel like it's kind of our obligation to talk about it a little bit, whether we believe it or not, because you and I have both seen odd things happen. And both of these true crime news pieces are examples of odd things happening. It just happens that they're both fugitives getting caught for these child sexual abuse materials. But one of them ties back to something we did in the first 20 episodes of this podcast. So I can't not mention it.
And that goes to show you, in my opinion, that it is incredibly odd when missing persons cases stay missing persons cases, right? It just illustrates my point. Eventually, things are found, things are worked out, right?
Right.
As soon as we found out about like the warrants and stuff, it became more apparent that more than likely he faked his disappearance.
Yeah, we knew that. I don't know how much we talked about it out loud, but like we felt like either he was a suicide or eventually he would be caught. I just didn't think it would be like this, but this is interesting.
Yeah, it seems like once he was put on the most wanted list, it got some attention, and that's probably what drew attention to him. And, you know, they got a tip. I don't know if it was from the police or just like a person who knew what was going on or whatever, but they got a tip and he was taken into custody. But one of the interesting parts of that to think about is, okay, Keyes was going to be arrested very shortly. I can't remember what day he was arrested. Do you remember?
So Israel Keyes ends up being arrested the following day, March 13th, 2012. The reason we found this guy so interesting was because we felt like when he was being arrested, he was leaving to go to where a victim was.
Right. And so if you think about it in terms of this guy had successfully faked his death since right around the time Israel Keyes got arrested, right?
Correct.
It just makes it seem like exponentially longer for some reason.
Right.
Like it was that much longer ago than, I initially think about it. But it's interesting that it came full circle.
It did. And here's what's wild about it. Canton, New York is 40 miles from Constable, New York.
Oh, that is interesting.
So when they talk about finding Justin Phillips in Canton, New York and verifying his identity, he's less than an hour from where Israel Keyes' family had a little house up there on a piece of property.
That is really interesting. It makes it seem like it's a small world.
Yeah, it does make it seem like it's a small world. You know, it's kind of an odd thing, like the whole idea of this guy. I passed by the thought of him actually being a Keyes victim a long time ago, but it's just we mentioned him in like the original. Like this podcast was only going to be 20 some episodes originally, and we kept going because of weird cases like this. And we always had a question of what happened to that guy.
Well, right. And as far as that particular time goes, so like right around the time and place that Keyes was, because we had a lot of details from that because he talked about it during his interviews. Like this was one of the prime possibilities.
It was. And there was some stuff that we didn't really release to the podcast proper. I don't know that. And I know no one else has ever released some of the things that we had. I don't even know if I handed everything to you, but I'll say it this way. People focused really intently on the FBI files and stuff, and they missed out on the Rangers files, the local Texas files. Somebody since then has gotten some of that. I know I have his interview from back then, but it's really useless in terms of information. I had all of his Anchorage police stuff, which was all the photos and the videos and the recovery of Samantha and them walking through Keyes' house and all of those things. But he did mention in some of those fairly useless things that like he was, he had been up north in Texas, and that's how we kind of got into Oklahoma a little ways, and we were like, this is really too far. But I think at one point we looked at it and we were like, well, if he left at 8:00 and he went here and drops his kid off, then he would arrive in Oklahoma around 3 a.m. And then he'd be back by 8 a.m, 9 a.m, if he did everything quickly and kept moving. And that was something that when we looked at that, we were like, it's ridiculous, but like all of this is ridiculous. So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Sure. But I think we ultimately did find out about the fugitive situation, and that was that.
Yep. Yeah, that was it. But I just thought it was interesting that there was an update in that case after I had seen her little blog post mention, kind of answering my question of why does she not cover certain people and they don't put them on Charlie Project.
Oh, well, my understanding of Charlie Project is that she doesn't necessarily like check NamUs and put everybody on there. It has to come from like a different place. And a comment I've heard was I would probably never tell a family member no. So it's more personal, right? It's not official. It's a very good source, though, and the fact that one person handles it is insane.
Yeah. Over the years, I found a lot of secondary sources and tertiary sources for things by reading there first and then looking for a detail I didn't know about.
I think that it boils down to, I know that there's actually criteria like listed right on the website. It's something to the effect of, the person has to be reported missing to law enforcement, and this, that, and the other, and the criteria is pretty strict. And I understand that because she's just a person doing this, right? And I don't know, it never occurred to me that somebody that like would want their loved one on a missing person site having not reported them missing.
That would be weird. I mean, I can think of a couple of circumstances people would be looking for someone that the police didn't take it seriously. And like in my head, I think of cases where the police have a different idea than the person. And for whatever reason, maybe if it's an older case, they didn't take a formal missing persons report because of a lack of cooperation or because they felt like it was a runaway or someone who was leaving a domestic violence situation. I could see reasons not to necessarily put people in there. I've certainly, I have found a lot of people alive over the years that this whole finding this blog thing, I was looking for someone. It's an older case that I have now found alive. I'm 100% certain they're alive. And I was trying to figure out where I got the information they were missing. And I did finally find them on NamUs or something when I was looking over the summer. But the bottom line is we find people all the time that are listed on Charlie Project, listed on NamUs, or are frequently talked about on Facebook or Reddit or whatever, even Web Sleuths. And they're alive. They just don't want to be associated with the last person I don't want to say
the person that thinks they're missing. Right.
Yeah. The person that thinks they're missing is not someone they're going to explain anything to.
Right. And that happens. And I don't know if the people, I don't know if they know they're missing or not. It doesn't really matter. It just goes away. Because as far as I'm concerned, when I come across a missing person who is not in fact missing, I move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you have much more on Mr. Lennon here?
No.
Okay. So I don't think these two guys, Weissman and Lennon, they might pop up again once they're kind of sentenced, or if there's anything interesting that pops out about what they've been up to. They're probably not going to make another appearance. The fact that they were together is kind of why they're here.
Time-wise, they were together.
Yeah, timing, like 2025.
Right.
Like they're fugitives for similar things that are caught in 2025. One we had covered before. One was just had this circuitous route he had taken that was interesting. I had one more piece of like true crime news. Normally, this is where I would talk about a case. I'm not talking about a case. I'm talking about a bunch of true crime news and sort of the internet's reaction to something. Primarily, I'm talking about it because you and I did this Overboard series in the fall where we talked about things that happen on cruise ships. We're not talking about it from the perspective of like giving you answers to anything. We're talking about it from the perspective of how crazy the true crime sphere on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook have gone over this case. And specifically, it's something that happened on a cruise ship. And we were pretty surprised at how much attention it's gotten. I pulled a Fox News article, which is sometimes a good source, sometimes a terrible source, but I pulled it because it talks about some specific things. And I pulled a New York Post article. This is, I think, a very heartbreaking case. I have seen court records in this case. I've seen a lot of people jumping to conclusions on it. Michael Ruiz for Fox News threw up an interesting headline that says cruise ship death mystery. Cheerleaders' final post hint at heartbreak and resilience. Dad breaks silence. And then the subtitle on the headline is 18-year-old Anna Kepner was a straight-A student who planned to join the military after graduation. So the article proper just says, the FBI is investigating the death of 18-year-old Anna Kepner, a Florida high school senior found dead aboard a Carnival cruise ship, just days after she posted a TikTok hinting at heartbreak and resilience. In an October 26 video, she shared a series of selfies and wrote that she would continue to have a smile on her face despite what sounds like a rough breakup. She says, even after breakup, being disrespected, being lied to, being cheated on, being used, getting manipulated, getting played, I will always have a smile on my face and a kind heart. This is from the on-screen text in her video, which this comes out of the Lawyer Herald originally, and Fox News just kind of ran with it as a secondary thing. The post continued, I don't know why I've been through what I've been through, but I can promise you I never deserved it. Am I mad at those people for what they did to me? No. Am I upset? Yes. She has a final post on October 30th that's much shorter. It says, you deserve to be happy, but if it ain't with me, then never mind, or NVM. Around 11:15 a.m., November 7th, 2025, she was found dead aboard the Carnival Horizon cruise ship. According to this article, her full name is Anna Marie Kepner. She was a senior and a member of the varsity cheerleading squad at Temple Christian School, which is a private K-12 Baptist school about 40 miles east of Orlando in a town called Titusville. According to an online obituary, she was an avid boater. She got her boating license before she could even drive a car. She would often blast music offshore and record TikToks in her bedroom mirror. Her family revealed that she planned to join the Navy after graduation and hoped to one day become a police officer in the K-9 unit. At just 18 years old, she filled the world with laughter, love, and light that reached everyone around her. Her remains were returned to shore in Miami the following Saturday morning, and a cause and manner of death have not yet been released at the time of this article. Kepner's close friend, Genevieve Guerrera, 18, told Fox 35 that Kepner was a positive influence on her friends and always encouraged them to do well in school. She said, this can't be real. Her father broke his silence in an interview Wednesday with the Daily Mail, explaining the family went on a 6-day cruise together and that she had died under unknown circumstances while the vessel was in international waters in the Gulf of Mexico. We were there as a family. Everybody was questioned. Everybody came off that ship. I don't know who they are looking at or what their investigation is. He said he had not heard anything from the FBI, which is a pretty familiar story, right? A lot of the stories we covered in Overboard, people didn't know what was going on.
Yep.
I pulled a second article from the New York Post by Catherine Donlevy from November 22nd, 2025. It says, Anna Kepner's mom found out about daughter's cruise death on Google. Blames ex for fraught relationship. The mother of the Florida teen killed on a Carnival cruise learned of her cheerleader daughter's death online because the girl's pictures and story were plastered, quote, all over Google, end quote. Heather Wright claimed her ex-husband stayed silent about their 18-year-old's death and failed to break the news to her directly because of their strained family ties. My ex-husband did not try to contact me at all whatsoever to let me know my daughter had died. This is Heather Wright talking to News Nation on Friday, hours after news broke that Anna Kepner was apparently killed by strangulation. Wright lives in Oklahoma, first heard her daughter might be dead from a friend who told her young son that his sister was murdered on a cruise ship. The mother desperately tried to contact Kepner by cell phone and even on TikTok, but got nowhere and turned to the internet. That's when she saw reports that the high school senior had been found dead in the cruise cabin that she was sharing with her two stepbrothers. She said, I Googled 18-year-old died on a cruise ship, and that's when my daughter's face popped up all over. Even law enforcement failed to reach out to her. This is her claim. She alleged they still had not contacted her in the weeks since Kepner's November 7th death. The woman had a fraught relationship with Kepner's father, Christopher Kepner. Said he even banned her from attending their daughter's memorial. He said he knew for a fact that Anna would not want me to be there, and I said, that's a lie. He said, if I step foot in Florida, I will have you arrested immediately for back child support. She said, I wore a wig and some really tall high heels, so that way if he was looking for somebody my height, he wouldn't notice me. No one spotted me, and I stayed in the back close to the door in case I needed to make a quick getaway. Heather Wright admitted she and her daughter did not have a relationship as a result of the rocky history between herself and Kepner's father, which most recently involved a screaming match and exchange of obscenities between the pair. She said, he made it extremely difficult for me to have a relationship with my daughter. She said she spoke with the teen only on birthdays and holidays. The relationship was so strained that Wright did not know anything about the 16-year-old stepbrother that's now potentially being investigated in connection with Kepner's death, even though no suspects have yet been named. He reportedly had a creepy obsession with Kepner and once allegedly climbed on top of her in bed, according to the ex-boyfriend of the slain 18-year-old. The two were fighting in the hours before her death. I don't know how true any of this is. It says Kepner's body was found wrapped in a blanket, covered by life jackets, and stashed under a bed. According to ABC News, Anna Kepner died from asphyxiation from a bar hold where an arm is held across the neck and had 2 bruises on the side of her throat. I don't know how true any of this is or whether this will change before the new year gets here, but I do identify with Heather Wright from Oklahoma, who is apparently biological mom to Anna Kepner. But that's where I was framing all of this from until I started reading through the court documents. And I don't know which of them is right, but there really truly is a terrible thing happening around all of this. And you've got this little girl dead on a cruise ship, which I think you and I know how this ends.
Well, right. I would say that you can tell from the focus of her interview for that article sort of maybe what some of the problems are.
Yeah.
Because she's talking about how her ex-husband didn't notify her.
Yeah.
As opposed to
My daughter
anything
is
to do
dead.
with her daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very strange, right?
I'm not going to justify either one of these people. I dug deep into all the other side of this. So the other side of this is Christopher Kepner has new relationship. There's all kinds of custody problems going on in all the relationships here. The allegations are that one of the children from his new relationship is potentially responsible for the death of Anna Kepner.
Purportedly, I didn't pull the record. I read the record, but I don't know where it came from, or I didn't go to the original source, indicating that the child custody issues that are going on, that they needed to be continued because of the death in the family and the potential that a minor child was going to be charged in it. That was a court filing.
Yeah.
But it seemed very vague. And I wasn't sure, obviously that's a convenient thing to push something you don't want to do anyway off, right? As far as it's a serious circumstance, right? that a child died. I mean, she was 18, but she died. And so that is a good excuse if there were to be a good excuse.
I've seen people, this is like a new trend in true crime. I thought AI was going to be the worst thing this year. It is not. The new thing is everybody's suddenly a crime reporter. And all of the things that you do where you source stuff from at least two sources and then try to verify a third are out the window. People are just willy-nilly filing public records requests and pulling digital records from online and throwing bits and pieces of them up there. I have never seen anything like this. And this case seems to be one of the more popular cases. There's another one circulating right now where people are just not interested in the truth at all. It is so strange.
Right. And more than likely, this case was a domestic problem to the extent that step siblings are in domestic relationships, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be leaning that way. I have nothing to substantiate. I can't make that statement personally because I'm with you. Like, that's what it looks like. But everybody's an anonymous source or like just posted a piece of this custody thing. I couldn't tell you anything of what's going on here. And it's on a cruise ship, which we've already highlighted in multiple episodes this year, are kind of black holes, these moving cities on water where nothing really is ever what it necessarily appears to be.
Well, and I guess part of what led me to believe that it is going to end up being a domestic thing is because of the way that she was found and the fact that like nobody else seemed to know what was going on.
Yeah.
Because she's staying in a room with siblings, and I say that with air quotes like everybody can see me. She's staying in the kids' room, I guess. I'm not really sure. And she was stuffed under a mattress with, what did they say? Life preservers?
Life jackets on top of her, yeah.
Right. And so, that's kind of that's a weird thing to happen, right? If, because of where she was found and, assuming that it is true that she was staying in a room with other children in her group, her family group, who's going to do it? Who else would be responsible for it?
Oh, I don't
without anybody knowing.
Okay, here's the reason that I say I can't make that statement. You and I, we worked on a case a number of years ago where there was an accused and there was an autopsy released and the accused had been charged with murder and then it was suddenly dropped. And I went and talked to like family members and I put all of this case together and ultimately it didn't make its way onto the show because no murder occurred. And we had been presented all this information from local news sources. It wasn't heavily covered. It had an ending, though. This case is on a cruise ship, and I'm not sure it'll ever get to this point. But one of the things that had happened in that case was it was a really weird set of circumstances where it was either these two people or this person, and the sheriff for some reason charged and held this person for like 5 years. But you and I had decided that it was really, and I'm not saying this is the ending, this is the reason we didn't cover it. We felt like we were looking at a very odd case of positional asphyxiation. And because of that, I tried to communicate that to the mother in that case, and it was a disaster because she really wanted to think it was murder. But like I couldn't even put the kid there with all the witnesses I found. I couldn't put him at the scene that night. I could only put him at the scene like the day before. And by 4:00, I had him locked down. So that means this girl had to be killed between 3:30 and 4:00 before his dad picked him up and took him home. Because he was like young. He was a kid. And like people had eyes on him. And, he had gotten in trouble that night So I knew exactly where he was when he was sent to his room with no pudding. You know what I mean?
With no pudding.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, so when I look at a case like this and I see a person who's active on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, the only thing I can think about how bad it is to like pin the stepbrother in, or either one of them, because there's a couple of stepkids here. I think the oldest stepkid's not on the boat, but the next two in line are on the boat. And I say that because if she was doing some silly TikTok prank, and I saw one recently that made me think of all of this, where the person does this weird thing in the bed where they're like laying in the bed and like the bed is all made up and looks like a normal bed, but there's a person laying there, like in the, like, I guess in the video they cut them out, like they cut out a shape, but like another version of that video was essentially you make the bed up around you, you move the mattress in the corner. And the only thing I could think was if someone repositioned something and she was like pulling a prank, and when they put that mattress down, it squished her and had the bar across it.
I mean, it's possible that could be anything like that would be possible, but it seems like that would have come out already.
I don't think it would on a cruise ship. And that's the reason I'm saying I can't accuse any of these kids of anything yet, because they're kids. And like, I 100% could believe they did something, but no one has released any official information saying they did. I've seen no juvenile petitions were filed, which is another weird wrinkle to all of this, because if it's say a 15-year-old or 16-year-old kid and they file a juvenile petition, in some states you don't see that for a long time. And because of that, the only thing I can think is we're going to wreck that kid's life if we talk about it that way and it turns out to be something nutty.
Well, right, and obviously, I don't feel like we've pointed the finger really.
No,
at
I don't mean us. I mean like the public at large.
Oh yeah, well, see, in a vacuum. Okay, so they did immediately the information that an 18-year-old girl's body was discovered on a cruise ship, like under or on top of, like between the mattress, whatever they said, right? That came out immediately.
Yes.
And then there was this vacuum where they were playing like 20 questions, not answering most of them. However, answering things like nobody was held captive on the ship, nobody had been arrested, that everybody that had been on the ship was allowed to deboard the ship, right? And so there was this vacuum that was created where you've got this young girl who, and I think it was very quickly also released that her cause of death was asphyxiation and her manner of death was homicide. And again, that vacuum has to be filled. Like, we cannot stand to have a vacuum like that anywhere in the realm of true crime. It won't stand on its own. And so everybody starts filling it.
Yep.
And it's, as far as I'm concerned, without information, it's basically just fiction, right? I mean, It could be true, I guess, but under the circumstances of what occurred, it seems like it's going to be someone in an inner circle that will be responsible for this, if in fact someone else is responsible for it. So that means in the event she was playing a prank, that's on her to an extent. It's an accident, right?
Yeah.
And then if somebody else did it to her, like a homicide would suggest, that means that it had to be somebody who had access to her and to where she ended up being found without being interrupted by someone else who would be talking at this point, right?
Correct.
And so that's what I'm basing it on. And it's really more, it's not personal. It's just more so a set of facts. There's only so many outcomes that can occur, right?
Oh,
And in any other situation where someone dies on a cruise ship, like you're going to have more information coming out because people would be aware of things happening. Now, I think this may be sort of a first as far as the way that the information was released, right? Because they're like, oh, there was a girl that her remains were brought back to, I think, to Miami. Then they're like, oh, they've done the autopsy and, she was killed. But no other information is coming out. And that's where that vacuum comes into play. And people just can't stand that.
And I'm not bringing this. I brought this up as true crime news because I was fascinated by the response and how quickly this cruise ship case came to the headlines. And also I had been so focused in on like looking at different cruise ship stories because we had just come out of doing the overboard stuff, and you and I do a lot of work along the way to make the holiday stuff happen. And to be quite honest, like what the mom says here is true. Like everywhere I looked about cruise ship cases was suddenly this girl's face. And she's 18 years old. She looks like I knew nothing about her. She looks completely like a pleasant young girl. 18-year-olds in my life right now, in terms of like the people I interact with that age, I don't understand a lot about what they do with social media. I don't understand a lot about how they interact with other people. So, looking at her, I have that exact same thought about her. And all I can see looking at her face over and over again is this loss of potential everything, like her future. What would she have contributed to the world? It's very difficult for me to like walk through on a cruise ship to start with, like all the basic motives and all the basic things that you just went over. I hate it if it's a family related or domestic thing here that's happened. I just look at cases like this, and I guess they're, for lack of a better word, they're a highlight to how weirdly we fill that empty vacuum you described. That's 100% correct, by the way. Yeah, it's us as people having problems with that vacuum is one of the reasons that like you and I like answering our questions and recording it and sharing it with people.
It is. You're absolutely right. I myself cannot stand the vacuum, but I go one step further and I say, like, I can't stand how haphazardly the vacuum is sometimes filled. And I'm guilty of it too. But
yeah,
I would say that the timing was crazy on this particular thing coming out right in the middle of our overboard.
I think we had already recorded everything, but I was still going back through because you had some thoughts on the Amy Bradley case that like we weren't sure if we'd addressed. I had a couple more cruise ship stories I was interested in covering, and I had a couple of sea stories, and like it turned out you had addressed those things like in previous recordings, so they did make it into the Overboard series. And so I kind of stopped, and the minute I stopped, I think maybe episode 2 had already come out and episode 3 was about to drop, and then this happened, and then episode 4 was like right on top of it, and it threw me off. I was like, whoa, that's not something I did. But like this had almost, Anna Kepner pretty quickly almost became the same level of intense press coverage as like Gabby Petito.
Oh, it was immediate. And it was because of the vacuum.
Yeah.
If it had been stated that so-and-so murdered her, or that she was attempting a prank and died by accident, or if it had been a definitive statement as opposed to no further information is available at this time, we would not have had any of this.
No, we wouldn't. I mean, it would have got a mention at the beginning of a true crime news segment. Like I would have mentioned that just because of the irony of having done Overboard and then this happening. Because like one of the things I've learned over the past year or so, as we've looked at cases, related to cruise ships, but definitely in the last 4 months because of the Amy Bradley thing coming out. I have discovered that you have this description that you use where, like the cruise ship is basically a whole town operating.
It is, yeah.
And I have discovered that like it is very difficult to get both useful and accurate information. And that shocks me for one really specific reason. Because for the last 25 years, these boats have had amazing closed circuit television recording. So for there to be these locked room mysteries occurring aboard these boats, like sucks me in. And that's not like a vacuum for me personally, but I do I think there are two different things going on there. I think the reason I'm sucked in is because why are we able to have people disappear from these boats with all this amazing video? That's my side.
That's interesting because that would fall back onto like what you think happened, right?
Well, it could.
There's not video in the rooms, right?
Correct. But this kind of the second part of that is like a cruise ship is the place you take your videos and photos. If you're a social media person, that's the place that your phone is going to be chock full of information of what you were doing. I'm not saying necessarily in your cabin, but
absolutely, yeah. And there would be all kinds of stuff that in the background of you could find clues to things.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the part, like, I've had this thing for a number of years where I think we can get too much information. Like, you call a vacuum not having answers. Is that correct?
It's just a void. It's a void of just, you have like this situation, but you don't have enough information to get to a place that situation makes sense. It's a void. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I find sometimes that like the resources required to organize and analyze certain types of information, the resources required to organize and analyze certain types of information are overwhelming. Like when the Snowden stuff came out and they were talking about, they've got all of our cell phones, text messages, phone calls, and they've recorded everything we've ever done. And the only thought I had was, if only we had people and computers that could deal with that. And I look at a situation like this where, say you've got 2,000 people on this boat. That means you got 2,000 devices wandering around with location information, text messages, video, photos, and like no way to gather it, organize it, and analyze it. Even if you're the FBI, there's no way to do it.
Well, but it's not even necessary.
No, it's not. It's not necessary in a case like this because you find out that it happened in the cabin, and there's these life jackets, which I have no idea how the life jackets get in the cabin. I can't wait to hear.
Did they just have those there?
No idea how all of this like comes to be. Like, and that's one of the things that makes it like kind of fascinating to me.
Well, and depending on what ends up having happened, I feel like the reality of it would be a lot less true crime exclusive worthy, sort of. Like,
right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but, if you're looking at a situation where, it was an accident or a snapped or anything like that, it's going to be, wow, that sucks. But I think that the reason that people go like crazy is because it's a terrible thing when an 18-year-old went on a cruise ship. She didn't disappear, right? So they didn't throw her overboard.
Right.
And I don't know, it seems like overboard would be a much better idea than what happened.
Yeah.
As far as it's a weird thing. Like somebody didn't know what else to do with her unless she was playing a prank, which, I mean, I kind of doubt it, but I guess it is a possibility. But I don't know, we can't handle the idea that there's not a logical reason why this young girl is now dead in a kind of what we imagine to be a horrible way. And, that is what it is.
Yeah. Well, this is one that might get another true crime news update. I am having trouble wrapping my mind around this being much more than domestic.
If it has some sort of sinister motive behind it, I'd be probably willing to talk. It is a unique situation because of it being on a cruise, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would like to think something more towards accidental, but because I see better options, but that doesn't mean anything really in this particular situation. You never know what has happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And it makes me wonder, did her family think she was missing for any amount of time?
I don't have like any of that information. Like we didn't get it. And even the way the family is talking about this, some of them have started to shut down their social media. But when I was running through the social media stuff for the people that are immediately involved, because I was able to find them really quickly. When it's announced, I was able to find the name and read a lot of what they were saying. I'm not 100% sure that everything I got in the first 2 or 3 days was 100% accurate, but I was able to read cousins, uncles, people talking about it. And some of it there was so much anger involved with the way they were talking to each other and kind of posting things. I think if it's domestic, they knew something like this could happen. Kind of.
Well, but see, you're right. However, if the newspaper articles are accurate in that essentially her dad said, I have no idea what happened. She's not here. She's dead, apparently. I don't know what happened. So that seems to kind of negate that, right?
A little bit, but you're asking the question, do they know she's missing? I don't know what the discovery of her body circumstances was. I don't know if she was a missing person. I don't know if she was a missing person and people came on the boat to look for her and found her. I don't know what happened there.
I've heard so many different accounts of that.
And none of it feels like we're getting official, accurate sources yet, right?
And it's I don't think so. I don't think anybody official has talked. And I feel like the people that are kind of close to the situation, but not official, they're trying to narrate it or stop other people from narrating it or whatever. It's a weird situation because I saw a few things and then I stopped looking because it was all kind of crazy. And that stuff is toxic, man.
It is.
And I feel I do realize they're all going through a really hard time, though.
Yeah, they do appear to be going through a really hard time, and I brought it up today because we were doing a wrap up, and it didn't feel right to do a whole news story, but then had the other news articles, and I was like, I really want to talk about this, but everything is so weird. Not about the case. The case, honestly, accident, domestic, whatever, is probably just a horrible tragedy itself. And that's kind of it. The thing that was interesting about it was just how everyone is talking about it. And
yeah, they've gone crazy.
Yeah. And that part, I wanted to bring it up and have a comment on that because I don't understand why people do that.
It's a vacuum.
Some of these, yeah, no, I do now that I've talked to you about it. I'm saying when I was looking at it, some of this stuff looks official and it looks like big content creators are covering it. And I'm just none of this is
I think that everybody, I think that the concern is genuine, whether it's for content, to get clicks and likes and monetize, versus whether people are genuinely wanting to know what occurred. I think it's all coming from a positive place in that everybody cares about this, right?
Yeah.
They do. They care that a 18-year-old died on a cruise. It's just, you can't take anything some random person comes up with as the truth of the matter, because we don't know. And it's just really, that's a hard thing to sit and kind of deal with, because it's a very tragic case. And in any other circumstance, let's say they weren't on a cruise, they were at home, okay?
We would barely hear about it.
I don't think we would have heard about it at all.
Yeah, like maybe a local headline if it's something like stepbrother killed sister or stepbrother killed stepsister or something like that. We might have heard that, but we wouldn't. I don't think we would know her name. And thank God they didn't throw her overboard, because it would like if
We
she
would
was-
have a mystery for the next 50 years.
Yep. Yeah.
She would be like the new person missing from a cruise ship.
Yep.
I think about that and I'm like, that makes me wonder though, why didn't they throw her overboard?
And I think that's how people have jumped to the stepbrother. They're like, he's too small to drag her out and throw her.
Oh, really? You think that's why?
Yeah, I think that's why she ends up in the bed. I think that's what people are thinking. That's why she ends up where she ended up, because they weren't like equipped physically, strength wise, to remove her from the room and dispose of her body. Because like, if you're on a boat, why would you put somebody under a bed?
No kidding. Like, there's a whole ocean
Yep.
there.
So that's what I think makes people jump to that conclusion. And I'm not saying he did or didn't do it. I'm just saying that's part of that vacuum filling that happens is people start putting two and two together in their head. But
Right. And so I guess this might be one of the, I was trying to think, has there been a situation where a homicide on a boat occurred, like a cruise ship, and the body was discovered? Because
yeah, we talked about a couple of those. Yeah. Yeah.
but beyond though, what I'm saying is like she was secreted away, right? To some extent, I guess.
You mean hidden? The body was hidden and then
Yeah.
found? Yeah, I mean, I think there's some that have just been open homicides where
Right, that I can imagine. But usually, if somebody's missing on a cruise ship, like they're not also found on the cruise ship. The idea would be that they're taken away from the cruise ship, or they're thrown overboard, or what have you. In this case, though, I don't know that she was missed by anybody. I don't know. I mean, she was 18. It's possible she might have not had contact with the people she was with, and it not be a big deal, right? Just depending on the dynamics of their vacation, I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess it is unique in that she wasn't readily, like she wasn't just laying there, right? Like I know a person who dropped dead on a boat and he was laying where he dropped dead, right?
Correct.
And doesn't seem to be what happened here, unless she put herself under the mattress.
Right.
Which I'm not saying couldn't have happened. It just seems weird that would be considered a homicide, right?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the pile of people that were like in this party. I think I counted correctly that there were 7 or 8 people altogether here. And like, I guess she could have been missing for a period of time. I don't think it would have lasted very long. I've been places I remember going places with my 18-year-old. Mostly my kid would stay in touch with me, but that is the age where they go do things with people their age.
Well, sure. And it just depends on the dynamic of the situation.
Yeah. And like, so I could definitely see like a period of time passing where like I didn't see my kid, but like I can't see a period of time passing where my kid didn't at least respond to my text message if we were like out somewhere in the world.
Well, sure.
And that would have been the thing that maybe had tipped off a missing person search. And maybe they did find her body that way. I mean, so the body gets to a medical examiner pretty fast. We get all this information. all of this information basically says very little about this case, even though you and I have spent 30, 40 minutes talking about it. Like, we don't know much about it. We were talking about it from the perspective of the vacuum and the spectacle. And, I try and think like about other murder cases where like somebody's found in a cabinet or a closet. I cannot like recall one off the top of my head related to a cruise ship homicide, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just can't speak to it with any authority, unfortunately.
Right. And all I'm saying is, even if there are other cases, this is a unique situation.
It is. It's definitely a unique situation. I don't have anything else on this right now. Do you have anything else?
I don't. I hope we get to hear the actual story at some point. I feel like the attention that's been brought is going to almost force it at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
Special consideration was given to True Crime Excess by LabrottieCreations.com. If you have a moment in your favorite app, please go on and give us a review or a 5-star rating. It helps us get noticed in the crowd. This is True Crime XS.
You fall like the stars. I break things like guitars. Thick skin, no scars. We're in trouble, we took it too far. I don't want to go, but it's 'cause I'll disappoint ya. It's all I've ever dreamed of, something I cannot let go of. I hate the competition, this culture's like a gym, and I lost the motivation to get fit in your expectations.
True Crime Excess is brought to you by John and Meg. It's written, produced, edited, and posted by John and Meg. You can always support True Crime Excess through Patreon.com, or if you have a story you'd like them to cover, you can reach them at TrueCrimeAccess.com. Thank you for joining us.